Hey guys, welcome to Do the Change podcast, where we're challenging and reimagining occupational and environmental health sciences. In this podcast, we focus on upcoming and current leaders in their field and dive into how they got to where they are today and their advice for those interested in the field. My name is Joanne Tay, and I'm a current undergraduate here at Berkeley. And our guest for this episode is Rezahn Abraha. So this is Rezahn. Hi, Rezahn.
Hi.
Rezahn is a recent graduate in environmental health sciences, holding an MPH with a focus on environmental health sciences and global health from UC Berkeley. With a BS in environmental health science from the same institution, Rezahn combines academic prowess with hands-on experience. She is a student of environmental policy analysis, exposure assessment, and epidemiological research. As a graduate student researcher, Rezahn contributed to the Biosphere Initiative, examining air pollution's impact in collaboration with partners like California Central Asthma Collaborative and the California Department of Public Health. As a graduate student instructor, she aims to cultivate an environment where her peers aim to see themselves as a generation of leaders. Beyond academia, Rezahn is actively engaged in community service, embodying a social justice-based approach to environmental health and striving to create equitable environments for all. Awesome. It's nice to meet you, Rezahn. How are you today?
Nice to meet you, Joanne. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Thanks so much for having me on.
It's the midst of final season. Is it
It,
also for you?
it is, and it is for you too. So go
Yes.
Bears.
Go Bears. I just finished my last one today. How about you?
Oh, congratulations. I
Thank
finished my
you.
last final last night and finishing up a report now.
Yeah, I also have like follow-up work to do.
Right?
We got this. Almost there.
Yes, almost there.
Okay, well, should we start by kind of getting into your personal journey?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I guess that I can tell you a little bit about how I got here in the master's program and now almost as a graduate of the master's program in public health. I have kind of an international upbringing. I grew up in Japan until the age of
Mm.
7, and then I moved to the United States. And it was a big move for me, even though I was very young. I saw a lot of obviously very um, obvious social cultural differences. And I think one of the biggest differences I noticed was that kind of the United States kind of had like an obvious lack of health disparities between people. Um, Japan has other kind of issues like that, but they weren't as obvious to me at the time. But when I moved to the United States, specifically to the Bay Area, I think I noticed a lot of things that it got me to think about what I know as a term now as like the social determinants of health. Things like access to housing and healthcare, and your socioeconomic background, um, and even just yeah, the like your family upbringing and cultural norms and things like that. So that was a huge, I think, formative part of my journey that I'd only realized honestly until I got to grad school. So that's kind of a big part of me. Another big part of me is that um I'm both like Eritrean on my dad's side and American on my mom's side. And so I think I grew up with a lot of kind of like cultural, like understanding that people come from very many different cultural backgrounds. And I think that also part of me kind of gave me an understanding of like how people why people are different, one, but also just it kind of gave me like a desire to kind of create understanding and the classic like mixed kid dilemma, right? Like I come from two different worlds, how do I blend them? But honestly, um it's just I don't know, I think it's something many people experience in many different ways, but I think that was also something that was just very formative for me and actually motivated my desire to kind of study something that would help me to like help me how to figure out how I can help other people kind of like become healthy and be able to work together. And I think that's what drew me to public health, honestly. So, um, which is interesting. Again, something I only realized when I was in grad school. Like I didn't really grow up thinking that, but it's become a lot more obvious to me, I think, the longer that I've been in school. And so, yeah, I went to undergrad at Berkeley, studied environmental sciences, really a really cool experience, but also challenging in many ways. I think a lot of undergrads at Berkeley can testify. I'm sure you can too, just because it's such a rigorous academic environment. And I think that Berkeley students are challenged in a lot of ways that are unique to the school, maybe even like socially, academically, like politically. So I think that those are all things that I contended with in my undergrad journey. And so coming from that background and going into grad school, as I was going to find a grad program, I was thinking about, well, the first thing was, can I pay for it? And so I was just applying to like many different scholarships and trying to figure out how I could like fund my journey. Um, because I honestly couldn't go to grad school unless I had funding. And so once I found like and secured funding, through ended up getting a scholarship through the Blue Shield of California program. I decided to commit to going to grad school, and then choosing my program, public health. I in my in undergrad for my environmental science major thesis, I did kind of a research project on Superfund sites and how like communities that were historically redlined had been in closer proximity to them, and I learned a lot about that. So environmental health kind of seemed like the just next right fit to jump into. So I
Hmm.
chose the grad program and um, got really excited after I got funding, and then I guess 2 years later, here I am as as a graduate. Yeah.
That's awesome. I kind of
Yeah.
relate to you in like the okay, so like you said that you got like the kind of multicultural experience and that helped you like kind of land on the field, a career field, right? I kind of relate to you because I was born in Malaysia, but I'm like ethnically Chinese. So like I'm one of the ethnic groups within Malaysia. And then I came here when I was like in like elementary school, kindergarten. So I kind of relate to you, but how did you turn like that experience into a source of passion for your career?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for telling me that. I love to hear about how people kind of like feel like they have navigated to where they are
Hmm.
now. Because honestly, like our younger experiences are so formative is like think something I've learned in grad school too, and it really shapes who you are. And I found a lot of people that kind of have similar backgrounds like what you were saying and describing in kind of this field. So um, but I guess your question was like how do I think that it's brought me here specifically?
Hmm.
Um, I think that I don't know what like that I guess just in the sense that um public health is known for that like its desire to work with people from many different kinds of disciplines and um that's like an academic translation to me because like right people from academic disciplines they're still people um like I don't know in a basic sense I guess and so
Hmm.
that kind of I think that's what kind of drew me to kind of public health and informs like my learning and desire to learn now.
Yeah, definitely. And you said when you came to America, you saw kind of like the social, how the social determinants of health played a role in health equity. Did you say, could you clarify, did you say that you saw like more health disparity here or in Japan? I didn't catch
Yeah.
that.
No, that's okay. I think I saw it here. There are health disparities in Japan, but growing up, I wasn't, as a child, I wasn't, I mean, as aware of them. And also, um, I think that Japan's like governing system and things like that, they're known for like universal health care and like, paid leave and things that are like basic things in some other countries. So I think that coming here and having, like being kind of confronted with major like disparities in health, mostly very obviously by factors like, yeah, like race and socioeconomic status were like huge things for me personally. And even though growing up in Japan, I kind of did like have that experience of like feeling like an outsider and things like that, because many people that come from Japan also talk about that. I think that also, in a sense, motivated me to be like, okay, well, I understand that even if I'm different from people, we can still work together. And that's always been like a motivating factor for me. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So it's kind of like coming from a background where you were kind of ultra aware of the differences between people and their background and upbringing, and then trying to find a field where you could serve those differences
Yeah,
and
that's a
help
great
people
way of putting
overcome
it.
them.
While
Thank
you're the host.
you. That's an awesome way of thinking about it. Yeah, and how did you end up going into environmental science for your undergrad?
Right. So, I came into college honestly super not confident about my skills. Some of the skills I thought I were confident in were writing, and I tried to like bring that kind of to the forefront in the classes that I took. But after my first year of taking classes and being undeclared, I realized that I wanted to go into some kind of STEM field. And I think that you might have heard a lot of environmental science students at Berkeley say this, but like, I think that, I think that a lot of even a lot of the people that I met in environmental science were like, I want to do STEM, but I don't want to go super hard in STEM. Like, I don't want to be an engineer. I don't want to, like, so environmental science seemed like a good medium to me. It seemed like safe, but also very interesting.
Mhm.
And while I'm not an expert in all things like environmental, I was able to be around people who like had a huge passion for the environment in a way that like I honestly didn't grow up with, but that I always had like appreciated. Like I'd always appreciated nature. My family had always been very like we would go frequently like on our family outings to like hikes and as opposed to like doing things kind of I don't know, indoors, going out to dinner, things like that. That wasn't really our family. We would more like do free family things. So that was, I think that's something that I really appreciated about my undergrad experience. And the program um, also allowed for in your like undergraduate thesis project, like a lot of room for just like diversity in what people could study. So that was a really cool aspect of my undergrad too. Even though obviously like all of us, I had like a lot of doubts about how good enough I was and like how smart I was and did I know enough about environmental science. And then like the older I've gotten, I realized it doesn't matter really what you know now. It's about like what you continue to study and even if somebody had years of experience at the age of 18, I don't know how, on a certain topic, I'm like that's great for them, but that doesn't have to be you for you to study that. So that's kind of what I learned in my undergrad. Yeah.
I really like that quote. It's not really about what you knew before. I'm probably messing it up, but it's what
Yeah,
you
no,
continue to
no.
study. I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
So, okay, so like so then after environmental science. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm also in CNR. Go CNR.
Woo!
So after environmental science, environmental health was like the next obvious pivot.
Yeah, so yeah, it was really that like undergraduate thesis project that I think put me like in that undergraduate thesis project, I'd use like GIS and I had also utilized like this class that I had taken by Jovan Lewis on, I think it was called Race, Space, and Geography. Such a great undergraduate class. I would recommend taking. So love the environmental science allowed me to take classes like that, you know. Um, and or Race, Space, and Inequality, that's what it was. I'm not sure if he's still teaching it, but if anybody's listening to this and is an undergrad, you should take that class. Um, and so, yeah, that's what kind of got me into environmental health, realizing that those things could be intersected. Yeah.
Awesome. How did you feel entering the environmental health space? Was the adjustment weird? Like how was it?
Yeah. So, I think that I was in not a unique position because I knew a lot of people who had gone straight from undergraduate to graduate school. There were, I would say, if I were to give an estimate, which it could be completely wrong, but maybe like half of the people came from directly from undergrad. I could be very wrong about that. There were also a lot of other people who I met that came from working for a few years, who are a lot older than me, who have like full life, like kids, and a job that they've continued, even as they're in graduate school, things like that. So it was an adjustment just because I was around people who are coming from all of these different backgrounds. Um, and I think that for me, I still felt like fresh out of college, kind of like very young in a sense in that way. And so I had to kind of adjust and develop what I thought was like a professional kind of like, I don't know, mask or like, but it ended up being, I don't know. So that's something I still, go back and forth with. Like everyone says that you feel like, what is it? Basically, like if you keep trying to do the thing you're trying to do, you won't feel like an imposter anymore, right? Like everybody feels like an imposter at first, but for me
Hmm.
that was like a really big source of like imposter syndrome, was just the fact that I felt very young and inexperienced in what I was doing. Um, like compared to the people around me who had had like real life experiences, real life experiences and like real life like work experience and what they were doing. So I think that that was kind of like a source of that. And then as I like have continued in the program, I realized that there are a lot of people who feel like they don't know what they're doing, and the best thing that you could do is just be honest about where you're at, and people are so willing to help you. Like that's something I think that I struggled with a lot in the program, even despite like there's so many people who make themselves available to support you. Um, and sometimes, yeah, you do feel like alone in your studies or whatever, but for the most part, if you reach out, people will help you. And I think that that's also just been a really big like learning curve for me, because I think that I had thought growing up that like your studies were supposed to be on your own, like you're supposed to read all the books and watch all the right videos. And if you don't, then it's your fault and no one should help you. Which is so not true. Like learning is such a like group project. Um, and that's another thing that Berkeley kind of teaches you, and especially I think in graduate school, you do a lot of work on your own, but at the end of the day, unless you can share that with people, unless you can learn from others and like ask questions and ask for help, like it's not going to be very useful to just do your own thing, you know?
That's like a valuable lesson to learn. Wow.
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
I don't know if I had anything else to say, but if you, let me ask you another question then. So now that you're more well adjusted to the environmental health field, what are you currently working on? Like, what are you looking towards?
Yeah, so currently, I don't have plans in terms of a job. I don't have plans in terms of, um, I really don't have plans, which is where I've heard many people were at in my position, and was also very scary to me at first. But after talking to a few people, graduates of the program, who had said that they had started work months after they ended graduation, and did not have like a job secured at the time of graduation, I feel a lot better about my decision. Yeah, I think that I'm going to take some time to travel. I'm going to take some time to myself and do things that I love, like reading. And ironically, like I feel like I haven't read a lot of just personal like types of books. You might relate to that. You're like always reading papers and then like scientific papers, and then you're like, oh, what about this book? And you're like, oh, I don't
Yes,
have to read
yes.
that.
I definitely relate. All the fantasy, science fiction,
Yes,
romantic fiction books I have sitting on my
yes.
shelf is like crazy.
Yeah, yeah, you get it. So like
Hmm.
it's tough to kind of get that personal time in. So I think I'm gonna take time to do that and just kind of like recuperate after this experience.
That's awesome. So let's backtrack a little because I realized I never pinpointed where exactly you are. So you just graduated.
Yeah, so
Ah, I
graduation
see.
is on I did
Oh,
graduation is on Monday.
okay. Wow, exciting.
So we're coming up. It's just around the corner. But all of my final projects are done, or final exams are done, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Wow, how do you feel?
Yeah, I'm still processing. I was talking to someone like earlier last week, and I was like, I think I'm gonna have like an existential crisis when I exit schooling. And I'm just putting it off to like a month from now. I already made plans to start taking classes, like casual like language classes and things like that.
Ooh,
Um, so that I don't feel like I'm missing out. I think I'm gonna have a like very big school FOMO in some ways. So
school FOMO. I
yeah.
never thought I'd hear the day where I would like school FOMO. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
What languages are you interested in learning?
I want to get more into learning Spanish, and I also want to practice my Japanese. That's been something that has been on my list for a very long time, but I haven't made a priority. So I think that I'm gonna try to go for doing those things.
You got this. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, let's backtrack a little bit more because I realized we skipped over all the stuff that you did in your time getting your MPH.
Yeah. So, yeah, this journey has been so like long and short at the same time. So I can start with, so I did a few things. One of the things I did was work with Betsy Noth on the Biosphere project, which was an initiative to um, collect data on air pollution and its health impacts in the Central Valley. And so I got a chance to kind of get more like hands-on like science experience. I got to work in a lab and be a lab assistant at the California Department of Public Health and um, spend time there. I got to help in the like data collection and processing of samples of air pollution samples for that was as part of that project. And that was also my summer practicum. So for folks that don't know, in this program, you have a summer practicum and you basically have a job for the summer. And that's part of your like learning experience in the program. So that was mine. And then I ended up continuing that work after the summer of the practicum into the fall and using some of the data from the project for my capstone project, my thesis project. And I learned about the impacts of kind of like how the time you spend in certain what's called microenvironments or personal like sources, for example, your home or your workplace or your car, and how the time you spend in those environments impacts your exposure to volatile organic compounds or like vapors that or kind of like gas substances that easily vaporize into the air, which have harmful health effects. So that was my kind of project, and that was a really important, I think, also like experience for me in grad school, just because I learned about the research process and how it can be very messy sometimes, but also very kind of rewarding, and how there are so many people involved and you have to work with so many different kinds of people that as you like learn, like as you continue, you realize like, oh, we're all kind of like leaning on each other. We're all providing different things for the project. And yeah, it's like an amazing thing. It takes a lot of like patience, and it takes a lot of, I think, just yeah, research, I feel like, and watching other people do it, because there are other people using like other students that are like kind of more leading the project. Shout out to Kimberly Val and Marley Slay. But uh, yeah, it's like working with data and working with all different types of data can be very kind of yeah, frustrating, but also like insightful and rewarding. Yeah, I really hope that all of the data from the project is useful and able to kind of like help contribute in reducing some of those like health impacts in the area. So that was one thing that I worked on. Another thing I worked on was, well, I was a graduate student instructor for a few different courses. One of them was actually an undergraduate class, environmental, SBUM 50 AC, if you've heard of it, or
I was debating
yes.
taking that next semester.
Yeah, and so SBUM 50 AC, it's a great class, and I worked with like 3 different undergraduate classes over the course of, I can't remember if it was, I think it was one semester. And that was also a very big learning experience, also coming from just being an undergrad and suddenly having the responsibility of a graduate student instructor was felt very big, but also I was willing to take it on apparently. And realizing that I didn't have all of the answers to the questions, and I think I got a lot like I was very worried about that initially at the job. I was like, okay, like how do I teach this course material to the best of my ability? And it was really just like a learning process. And the instructor was very great, Kurtz Breyer. So that was an amazing experience. And then as tough as it was sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, it was tough at times. But and then in the fall, I transitioned to being a graduate student instructor for a health policy and management introduction course for I think all students in um, at public health. Like in your first year, you take um, sorry, I'm blanking on the name,
No worries.
policy management, but the introduction class. So I helped with that as well, and that was also a very big learning experience. Going from kind of teaching undergrad classes to teaching my own peers was a huge transition also. So I learned a lot there. And then I transitioned into being a graduate student instructor for a mapping course for health equity. It's public health maps and spatial analysis for health equity. And that's taught by Charlotte Smith, also a great class. And then in that role, kind of just learning to realizing that I had more skills than I thought and able to help troubleshoot all of these issues that student experiences experienced in GIS. And for context, as an undergrad, I felt very unconfident when I came to those things, like working with GIS. And I always admired the GSIs and I thought like, wow, they know so much. Like they're so helpful. And like I had this moment a couple weeks ago where I was helping a student and I was working on a problem I think that I had in undergrad and getting so frustrated with it because I would spend like hours working on these maps. And then I was able to help the student and I was like, okay, look at that. I've grown. So really like maybe like learning by teaching kind of person.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that's been also really a good experience. Yeah.
How did you initially overcome like your struggles with learning how to mentor other students, especially when you were teaching undergrads in 50 AC? Like, how did you overcome that, I guess, obstacle?
Yeah. Honestly, I think that I just had to realize like that there were some there were some things that I first of all I didn't know and I had to ask for help from the teaching team, from the instructor, um, about questions that I couldn't answer because it was better to ask for help than just, try frantically to solve it on my own and then get frustrated. Um, and then and I also learned that like mentorship is just a lot about like encouragement, I think. And it's like equal parts encouragement and providing like helpful feedback. And both are super important. Like, because nobody just wants to be told they're doing a good, I mean, okay, maybe some people want to be told they're doing a good job all the time. I am one of them, but it's so important to have people tell you, like, to help you fix things and to give you feedback that you're looking for, but you have to be willing to accept it. And so I think that that's something I like learned and helped me kind of overcome like mentoring with students um because some people just need to be told when they're working on something, it looks great. You're like, you're doing a great job. And that's what they need. That's what mentorship is for them. But then for another student, they're like, no, you need to help me figure out what is this issue that I'm having? Like what's wrong with my paper, or what's wrong with my map, or what's wrong with um and some people want you to find an issue. And so you'll find an issue. Because the truth is like all work can be made better, right? And it's just like when those people that are willing to ask for that feedback and want it, they improve. So I think that there's two parts to that. And then that's helped me kind of like learn about myself too, because I think I'm often very self-critical and I don't like as I talk about this, but like I don't ask for help. with things. So just being able to be like, nobody, like, everybody wants you to improve. And I think that's kind of like the culture in public health and what I've learned. Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow. That's a unique take on mentorship that I wouldn't really get as an undergrad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I was gonna ask you, like, this kind of segues, but did you have any last thoughts before?
Oh, well, yeah, I have other thoughts on like how I thought about mentorship in terms of just like I was just relating. I just wanted to hear what you had to say about it. But
No,
the
go for it. I was gonna ask you like what you thought your most valuable lesson was from that mentorship experience, but like please let me know what
No,
your
that's
insights.
great. No, no, no. I
Okay,
want
okay.
to hear your question. Yeah, so the most valuable experience, one of the most rewarding was when I was helping a student and then I was able to help them with a problem that I had earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then yeah, I think that because that for me is what like helps build confidence is like when you're able to help others with something. Which also is like, yeah, I think in undergrad some people have and some people like don't, like you study in groups or you kind of don't, or like there's so many different things, places people are coming from at undergrad at Berkeley that you're like, how do I figure this out first of all? And it can just be like a huge as I'm sure you've experienced, like just a huge kind of like learning experience. So I think that mentoring kind of others is like um I figured out how, like I want to mentor it and how in a way like I need to mentor myself, which is just to like relax. It's gonna be okay. You got this, and also ask for help. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Hey guys, this is Joanne Tay, your host for this episode, and we have reached the end of part one of this conversation with our wonderful guest. Don't click out yet because part two of this conversation has already been posted, so check out our page to finish the conversation. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify and Instagram at Do the Change Podcast.